Councilwoman Pastor is on her way. She will arrive probably promptly after we show the video. So we're going to go ahead and get started this evening. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for coming out this evening, staff as well as residents to come out today. As you know, we're here to talk about the proposed city manager's trial budget and get your thoughts and your feedback. This is a very important part of our process that we go through every year. And I can attest that not many cities our size do what we do in terms of reaching out to the community and trying to get feedback. And so I'm very appreciative of you coming out here this evening and giving us your feedback and your thoughts. It's important. The end result of what we ultimately produce usually changes based on some of that feedback. So it's very important that you participate in this process. And I just want to thank you for coming out. We do have a couple of housekeeping rules that I want to kind of clear up at the front end. And so first, we do have a translator tonight for anyone that needs translation services. So I'll let Mario introduce himself.
Good evening. My name is Mario Barajas. I'll be tonight's interpreter, Spanish interpreter. I'll take a moment now to introduce myself to our Spanish-speaking audience. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Mario Barajas. Voy a estar sirviéndoles como el intérprete de esta tarde. Les quiero avisar, si acaso van a necesitar los auriculares, pueden abordarme para poder conseguirlos de allá atrás y de esa manera pueden escuchar la interpretación. Y al dar un comentario público, los recordamos de que si acaso de ser posible, que hagan pausas, así para que podamos interpretarles de la mejor manera posible. Gracias.
Thank you, Mario. And so we do have about a 10-minute video to show this evening. It highlights the surplus that we're here to talk about tonight. We do, as a city, we find ourselves in very strong fiscal position, and I think that's really important. And I do want to acknowledge our council and our mayor for driving that leadership and providing us with the direction that we need to find ourselves in this position. Not many cities our size can say that they have the fiscal wherewithal that we've demonstrated over the last couple of years, and I think that's really important. It's also important to recognize the fact that our employees over the last decade and a half after the Great Recession, they've endured a lot. We've had to take a lot of pay cuts. We've lacked our ability to hire and fill positions because our compensation just wasn't really in line with the market. And so you'll see a large section of this budget is dedicated and allocated to our employees because they're the ones that interact and interface with everyone on their daily day, trying to get things done in the city. And so we are allocating about $114 million of our $134 million surplus to our employees. Again, trying to make up for lost ground. Also, we are the 5th largest city in the country, and we should pay the best. If we're going to be the best and want the best, you got to pay the best. And I think that's what this budget also demonstrates. There's also an opportunity in our video where you get to see something that I'm really excited about, and that's our 2023 bond program. We have not had a bond program since 2006. And so with this first bond program, we're setting up something that we hope will be a routine process for us. So we're looking to do a bond program every 5 years of approximately $500 million. And we're doing that without raising the rate on the property tax. And so I think that's really important to emphasize. So if we're successful over the next 20 years, that's $2 billion worth of investment into this city to make sure that we have proper roads, buildings, facilities, parks, libraries, police stations, and fire stations. And so again, being able to do that at this time without raising our rate is really, really impressive. And so again, I hope that all of you come out in November and vote for that bond program. And so what we're going to do tonight, if you want to speak on the budget, we ask that you go back to the back table there, fill out a speaker card. Those cards will be run up to the table. We will call you one by one, and then we ask that you come to this microphone so that our communications folks can get you on camera and we can broadcast the entirety of our meeting. So with that, we'll go ahead and roll into our video, and after that, hopefully the councilwoman is here and we can introduce her and let her have some opening comments.
City of Phoenix trial budget for fiscal year 2020 proposed by the Phoenix City Manager is ready for public review and comment. A trial budget is a rough draft of the actual budget, estimating how much money and how it will be used for the next fiscal year. How does Phoenix's annual budget work? The city budget is made up of 3 parts: the general fund, enterprise funds, and special revenue funds. The general fund is made up of city sales tax, property taxes, revenue distributed by the state from income tax, sales and vehicle license taxes, and some fines and fees. The general fund supports many of the services our residents, visitors, and businesses have come to expect in Phoenix, such as libraries, parks, senior and youth programs, police and fire services, and more. Enterprise funds are those city departments that only charge the people who use their services directly, like water and sewer, airlines and passengers at Sky Harbor, and trash and recycling customers. Finally, special revenue funds reserved for specific purposes from grants and voter-approved sales taxes dedicated for parks and preserves, transportation, and public safety. That's how Phoenix gets its money. Now, how do we spend it? Phoenix has a long history of responsible budgeting, ensuring resources are balanced to projected expenses each fiscal year. A top priority of the City Council is to ensure the public can engage in the budget development process every year, giving the community a voice in the future of our city. Residents have multiple opportunities to provide their input ahead of final budget decision-making scheduled for May 16th. Each year, departments look at what it will take to provide services for the upcoming year, and staff forecast what resources will be available to pay for services. The city manager then proposes a trial budget in March each year that identifies how resources should best be allocated to achieve city council and community priorities. Then, we ask for your input at community budget hearings in April each year by using the Fund Phoenix interactive budget tool available in English and Spanish, or by contacting the city directly to ensure the budget reflects the priorities of our residents and city council. After receiving your input, the city council will vote on the budget in May and legally adopt the budget in June each year. State law requires the city's budget to be balanced each year, and this year we are happy to report a projected budget surplus of $134 million. This is thanks to Phoenix's continued strong economy and sound fiscal leadership from the mayor and city council. For fiscal year 2023-24, the proposed general fund trial budget proposes to allocate the surplus primarily to address employee compensation. The city is experiencing significant vacancies across all city departments due to the competitive labor market, and increases are necessary so we can ensure our most valuable asset is paid competitively and positions can be filled with the best talent available to deliver services to you. This year's trial budget also includes $14 million in general fund money proposed to programs and services in City Council and community priority areas. Focus Area 1, continuing services for vulnerable populations. To ensure vulnerable populations can continue receiving vital services that are at risk due to expiring or reduced grant funding, and increase resources used to help individuals experiencing homelessness, substance abuse, and behavioral health issues, $7.4 million is proposed to support the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, Victims Advocacy Services, and expand the Behavioral Health Engagement Team's contract. The funds proposed would also expand the Phoenix Cares Outreach Program to increase resources focusing on targeted areas in the city with high concentrations of encampments requiring cleanup, and continue operations next fiscal year at shelters serving 420 individuals per night and approximately 1,300 each year. Focus Area 2, enhancing public safety responsiveness and criminal justice. To help improve emergency response times across the city, $3.5 million is proposed for the Phoenix Fire Department for an additional rescue unit and to fully staff a new fire station located at 19th Avenue and Chandler Boulevard. As part of the Phoenix Police Department's focus on civilianization efforts, new positions are included for civilian investigators and police assistants within the department, along with training and crime scene specialists. Costs will be absorbed in the existing police department operating budget for fiscal year 2023-24. This proposal also includes additional resources for the law department to replace grant funding that will be reduced next fiscal year used to provide services to victims of crime. Focus Area 3, healthy neighborhoods and community enrichment. To expand the city's efforts toward equity and arts, $125,000 is proposed to increase funding for the Community Arts Grants Program that supports renters at Herberger Theater Center and other local venues. Also, a new project manager position to help manage and coordinate the Office of Arts and Culture's model for involving artists in designing and building a better city. The cost for this position will be paid for with existing capital project funds. A proposed $571,000 for the Neighborhood Services Department would add funding to expand the gated alley program, providing resources to install approximately 77 new gated alley segments each year, and restore 2 grant-funded neighborhood inspector positions to the general fund, which will free up grant resources used to serve low and moderate income residents. In an effort to increase park security and advance the city's climate action plan, $2 million is proposed for the Parks and Recreation Department to hire 14 park rangers and 1 park manager to create 2 urban park ranger teams that will work overnight. The addition of an overnight third shift will provide coverage 24 hours per day, 7 days a week at city parks. The proposed funds will also add more staff to expand tree planting and shade canopy efforts citywide and add a new volunteer coordinator to assist in the coordination of volunteer efforts throughout city parks. Non-general fund supplementals total $1.4 million. Due to growth and security needs at the airport, $917,000 is proposed for 2 new access agents for badging services and to add vehicles needed for the Airport Bureau. $488,000 is proposed to support technology and streamlining of services provided by the Planning and Development Department, including managing the Shape Phoenix permitting system, enhanced electronic plan review, and staff to support increased human resource activity. In addition, $1 million is reserved for possible changes to the trial budget based on resident feedback on the budget, and $5 million will go to the General Fund Contingency, or Rainy Day Fund, to ensure resources are available in the event of unexpected economic or financial events. This has been just a taste of what you will find in the 2023-24 City of Phoenix proposed trial budget. More information on the proposed budget is available at our website, Phoenix.gov/budget. We encourage you to provide your input using Fund PHX, an interactive budget tool available in English and Spanish that lets you provide direct feedback on the proposed fiscal year 2023-24 trial budget additions. We hope that you'll review additional details in the budget tabloid available at each budget hearing in English and Spanish and online at Phoenix.gov/budget. Please share your feedback in whatever way works best for you at one of the community budget hearings or by email at budget.research@phoenix.gov. You can comment on the city's social media pages at City of Phoenix AZ on Facebook or on Twitter using hashtag PHXBudget, or call us at 602-262-4643. 4800. All resident feedback will be shared with the City Council so they may consider it before making final budget decisions. The City Manager will present his proposed budget for 2023-2024 to the Phoenix City Council on May 2nd, 2023. The Council's budget decision will take place on May 16th. 2023. Thank you for being a part of this important process. We look forward to hearing your ideas for this year's trial budget and the future of Phoenix. And now to an informational update on the City Council approved 2023 General Obligation Bond Program. In December, the City Council approved a General Obligation Bond Program to advance to the voters in the upcoming November 7th election. General obligation bonds, also known as GO bonds, provide a mechanism for the city to fund the construction and rehabilitation of city facilities and infrastructure such as parks, libraries, fire stations, police precincts, community centers, streets and storm drains, and arts facilities. A GO bond program requires voter approval and cannot be used to fund operating costs like staff salaries or to fund assets in which the city has no legal interest. Phoenix voters have approved 12 GO bond programs since 1957, totaling $4.6 billion, with the last GO bond program approved by voters in 2006. This 17-year gap is the longest in the city's bond program history and has resulted in a significant amount of unfunded capital needs. In 2022, Phoenix City Council appointed a Citizens GO Bond Committee to identify the highest priority unfunded capital needs, totaling $500 million. In the fall, committee members met to review capital needs identified by city departments and heard proposals and input from the public. After 3 months of committee deliberation and extensive public input, the committee recommended a proposed $500 million GO bond program to Phoenix City Council. The City Council approved GO bond programs include projects in the areas of arts and culture, economic development and education, environment and sustainability, housing, human services and homelessness, neighborhoods and city services, parks and recreation, public safety, and streets and storm drainage. The program includes projects such as a new Latino cultural center, acquiring land for Rio Reimagined, affordable housing property preservation, a new senior and recreation center, new regional pools, and improvements to existing community centers and park facilities, funding for heat resiliency projects, Vision Zero roadway safety initiatives, new and expanded library branches, and new and renovated fire stations throughout the city to improve response times. The full list of projects and programs is available on the city's website at Phoenix.gov/bond. Voters will decide the outcome of the City Council-approved GO bond program during a November 7th, 2023 bond election. Election materials, including an informational pamphlet with more detail about the bond program, will be mailed to all voters in the fall ahead of the election.
All right, as we continue to wait on our council member, we'll go ahead and get started calling up names. So I'll call you in the order of the cards that we have this evening. And first up is John Walker. John?
Hello, good evening, Mr. City Manager. Thank you for taking my comments. It's not too unfortunate for me that Councilwoman Pastor isn't here. I was actually at the budget hearing yesterday, the youth budget hearing, with my 8-year-old daughter, so she's already heard my spiel, but I will change it up a little bit today. I'm here on behalf of Phoenix spokespeople in requesting that the city continue its work in improving bike infrastructure. You know, yesterday I really thanked the city for all the work that they've done, especially in the past couple of years. A lot of really great projects have gone in, especially here in Central Phoenix, which I'm able to use. Every day I commute with my 3 kids on an electric cargo bike, specifically up and down 3rd Street, just south of here. And in the time that the road work has been done, I've seen a huge increase in the number of cyclists and scooter goers that are using that street. So that's been really wonderful to see. The bigger issue I think here is that there really is a crisis on Phoenix's roads in terms of the carnage that's going on almost daily from pedestrians and cyclists being killed or seriously injured. You know, you see it almost daily, certainly weekly in the paper. And in fact, just a few days ago here at 3rd Avenue and Indian School, there was a cyclist fatality from a vehicle taking a right turn. And you know, let's keep this in context. And when you look at other countries, their fatality rates on the roadway, especially in Europe, they're a lot lower. And the real reason, I think, is because for decades now, many of those countries have been prioritizing multimodal ways of getting around in a safe manner. And certainly cars are still part of the equation, and they will be for a very long time. And in Phoenix, I think we have some really interesting opportunities. Obviously, we have lots of arterial streets here where cars drive frequently faster than the speed limit. But with that, we have side streets, the 3rd streets, the 12th streets, that the city can really invest in like they have done in 3rd Street. What I would emphasize is we need physically separated bike lanes to keep the drivers and cyclists and other road users separate, not just for safety, obviously that's critical, but also to increase usage. What I've witnessed on 3rd Street, despite there not being a physical barrier, which I think is absolutely necessary, but what I have witnessed on 3rd Street is I see kids riding there and I see parents riding there. Good evening, Councilwoman. And I see a more wide variety of individuals using that roadway because they feel safer. And that's such a huge part of it. For so long, Phoenix has been accommodating car travel, and that's certainly part of the equation, but I want the city to really focus on the safety of our citizens and the ability for people to get around in different means. So those are my comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. So we'll go ahead and give the councilwoman an opportunity to address the audience this evening. It's on.
On? Hello? Okay. Good evening. Sorry. I'm running from City Hall. There's a little dynamics happening. Welcome, and thank you for being here. Thank you for participating in the budget process. It's very important to participate in the budget process so then staff can hear what's happening within the community and what the community is asking for. I see that Phoenix Day is here, is making the request of 250,000. John, I want to tell you in my world, as I stay in this world, District 4, I have said no additional bike lanes will be added unless there's protective infrastructure. And what I mean by that is protective infrastructure, not the plastic cones or anything like that, true protective infrastructure. And that if that means, and some people may be upset at me, I said if that means that's less bike lanes in the sense of move those dollars to protective lanes and do it right, then I'm willing to do that. And so I just wanted to say that. I didn't say it last night, but that's right now my philosophy in the bike lanes in District 4, which we are adding. And as you can see, we are adding protective lanes, so. But thank you, I'll shut up.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman. Next up, Craig Tripkin.
Oh, I thought he had already gone.
Nope.
I am not going to talk about Phoenix Day because I have at every other budget hearing, and I'll spare you that. I'm here, I want to talk about homelessness. I'm with a New Leaf, and a New Leaf provides services, everything from ranging from homeless shelter to housing, to domestic violence services, education services, job training. And regarding homeless, I guess I want to say two things, really. One is, we all know we must solve this problem as a city. It has to happen. We cannot, we're the 5th largest city in the country, and we can't compare ourselves to New York, Chicago, LA, and Houston is not a favorable comparison for us, and I think we must solve it. The second thing I'd say is we've got to reinvent shelter. Shelter, and you all know I've been in the shelter business. We've got to figure out ways to make shelter really work for people. Get them quickly into services. Every person in shelter is to some extent a failure of our ability, our community's ability to divert people into substance abuse, into behavioral health, into job training. And that's, I can't emphasize how important I think this is for our city. It's bad for the individual, it's bad for neighborhoods, it's bad for businesses, and it's bad for the city. And we must address homelessness. And I'll say one more thing. Everybody likes to say homelessness is an affordable housing problem. Yes, that is a root cause in many, many respects. And we cannot afford to wait a decade for the housing to get built, for the legislature to change eviction laws or to develop rent controls or whatever's the thing to force the city to change the zoning. Yes, housing is vital and critical, and we can't, from a homelessness standpoint, we cannot afford to wait for housing to get built. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tripkin. Next up, Laura Sands.
Hi there, I'm Lara Sands. I am a resident of District 4. I've lived here for 10 years in Willow, beautiful Willow neighborhood. I'm very excited. I got the notification today that construction will be starting on 3rd and 5th Avenues. The cycle track will continue to the north, and that is incredible. I do come here today as a bicyclist, as a representative of Phoenix spokespeople, and I just wanted to reflect on, we are a growing city. I think we're maybe the fastest growing county in the country. And I love all the new development that's happening in the central city. I love all the new housing, but we can't all drive cars. All these new people, we need to share our roadways, we need to share our public spaces. And I really appreciate when the city thinks about those of us who get around on foot, who get around on scooters, who get around on bicycles, what we call active transportation. We need to get around safely, and not just for me. I'm a person who will bicycle on Central Avenue. I'm thinking about my parents who are gonna be turning 80, and they have bicycles. They're not gonna bike on Central Avenue, but they'll bike on 3rd Avenue where we're putting in the cycle track. And young people, like really little people, like John's daughter, they need to be able to ride around too and get to the places they wanna go, like to school, safely. So I heard, City Manager, I heard you say at a previous meeting that you're really thinking about the future, and we need to be building streets for 5, 10 years into the future for all of us to share this public space. So I wanted to thank you for these meetings, not only to get to speak to you, but to hear what's of interest to all Phoenicians. I had no idea there was a cricket scene happening up north.
Neither did I.
Right? But it is incredibly eye-opening to hear what my fellow residents value. I reflect their values as well, and I hope that protected bike lanes. Thank you so much. And protection means a concrete barrier. I've heard from meetings with city staff that they favor those green flexible posts for 2 reasons. They're reflective, and they don't damage cars. Well, come on, cars, please don't drive into the green posts, because I'm on the other side of the green posts. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Sands. Next up, Drew Brick.
Hi, good evening. My name is Drew. My property address is 2629 North 7th Street. I don't have anything prepared, but I came to one of these hearings last year, and I suppose I'll probably come again next year. But the intersection floods, and so the crown of the road is higher than the curb, and so when it rains, severely, the water gets pushed out of the road into the property and floods in the front doors. And so I'm really just here to continue the conversation. Before the last year's hearing, I've been working with different flavors of streets and public works for about 5 years. So we're going on 7 years now, and it's still kind of an open-ended question. So. Generally, I'm here in support of the local drainage solutions budget. I think it's 1.25 million, which isn't very much. So I think maybe it should be more. I don't know. But selfishly, I hope someday that the intersection also gets fixed so that the property doesn't flood anymore. So I support City Engineer Froberg. I think he does his best with what he has, but I think, if we could allocate more money or, address this specific problem, it would be very helpful. I know it can be done. It looks like new storm drains were added on Virginia and 7th Street in like the early 2000s. So anyways, that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Brick. Brianna, could I ask you or someone else from the streets to reach out to Mr. Brick and talk to him about this issue? Because I do remember this from last year as well.
Yeah, this
I
has
do.
been an ongoing budget
Yeah.
conversation.
Someone could talk to Mr. Brick, I'd appreciate it.
Better
Next
be
up,
fixed.
Richard Diaporte. Can't really make this out. De Luarte, okay, thank you.
Thank you very, very much for this opportunity. I'm a 43-year city resident, and I'm generally satisfied with my neighborhood services, police, fire, refuse, trash. I was very pleased about the long-awaited bond election that it's been 17 years. I was in my 50s, and I expect to support. As a member of the Historic Preservation Commission, I do welcome the current funding levels and the residential exterior rehab grants, as well as the warehouse and threatened building grants being included. If I do have a concern that's not on the agenda, but it's the painstakingly slow reopening of City Hall. I'm on the Historic Preservation Commission. We have not had an in-person meeting since March of 2020. Monday, we have our first. Now, this also, I go to a lot of coffees with guys my age who all have kids and all have, people talk about, complain about a cumbersome, slow, confusing process for obtaining construction permits, especially residential, but not limited to those. Residents have trouble getting a hold of people, getting return calls back. The Shape Phoenix portal is difficult to navigate, and when they complain to the office holders, they say, tell our managers. So, yeah, these are concerns. I understand you guys had a lot on your plate with COVID and all this, and I know that many old veteran office holders and supervisors have probably left. But in their stead, it takes people getting better. In fact, I can tell you about one such man, Fred Tegiga, who's a structural planner, is so helpful to people. People pass his name around because he can take it. But if the offices are not open, you have to go. You can't go to one building, one office to the other, and the process is long. And this is a city I love. This is a city that is in competition with other cities. We are doing a lot of construction in all kinds of areas, and I want it to do well.
Thank you, Mr. De Luarte. Karen Engelman.
Hello, Mr. Barton, Councilwoman Pastor. I'm very happy to be here. I'm a resident of District 4. I live in Willow, and I am here on behalf of the arts and culture. I think that arts and culture are what make a city great. It doesn't matter how big the city is, how small the city is. And as a relatively recent transplant to Phoenix, I think that I see the arts blossoming everywhere. It's everywhere from the airport to, bus stops, city programs for young people. And as an author and visual artist myself, I know that arts make people's lives better, whether they know it or not. So I am here to say thank you for your support for the arts, and I hope that it continues. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Calder Vanderveen. Calder and Cleo Vanderveen.
I'm here because whenever my mom comes home from work, she'll say how many cars that are parked in the bike lane that day. And it's really annoying because she'll show us every single picture of every single car that was parked in the bike lane. She'll go on and on and on about every single car. And so I'd like it if you would make some way that would make cars stop parking in the bike lanes.
Thank you. Cleo, Calder, you going to speak separately or?
So I also have a slightly more elaborated version of the same statement, which is that I really like that there are bike lanes. I'm not a biker, but my mom is. And also, to reiterate some other points, is that sometimes biking is really dangerous in the city because of the lack of real protected bike lanes. But even when you put in those protected bike lanes, even ones with concrete curbs, there are people who will just take that SUV and hop right over it and park. And it creates a dangerous situation, let alone other places that aren't protected. And since my mom was in a car versus bike crash recently, I made her turn on location services on her phone so I can keep track of her every minute that she's on that bike. And if it stops for 5 minutes, I am terrified. And so I'm asking that you continue your work on bike lanes, but also that when you put that money into infrastructure, that it is actually usable. Because she really does talk to us every night about every single car she found in the bike lane, and there were like 21 today. It's not a long commute. This is an insane number of cars. I pass them in my car. I mean, like someone writing tickets, like the revenue generates itself, right? But I think that this is a worthwhile thing to pursue because it's a safety issue.
Thank you both for coming out. David Tapley.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. I'm also here half as a Phoenix spokespeople person and a regular bicycle commuter. And I just wanted to emphasize, and I live in District 4, just down there in Coronado. And lucky enough, I can work in a co-working space just here on 3rd Street at Cahoots. So 3rd Street's been kind of amazing. And like John said, it's been amazing to witness in the last couple of years. It's gone from I'd see 0 people riding to now, on my 20-minute ride each way, I'll usually see at least a handful of people riding bikes of all ages and abilities, which is really cool. I just wanted to emphasize, I don't know if you've heard of the work of Strong Towns. It's a group that's done a lot of work, really just emphasizing that building bikeable, walkable neighborhoods just makes a lot more economic sense. And I think anything we can do to try and help people make economic choices on an individual level, maybe they can go down to 1 car and then all the money they're saving, some people it's a third of their income on gas, insurance, tags. They could put that money in savings, pay down some debt. It can be a real life changer for some people. So I think I'd like to emphasize that spending money on bicycle infrastructure, protected bicycle infrastructure, will pay for itself in the long run. It's not like something that just helps people who are too poor or needy to want a car. I think it makes economic sense in the long run for the city. And I definitely check out Strong Towns. They have some great data. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Paul Barrow.
Good evening. Thank you for having me this evening. My name is Paul Barrow. I'm here with my partner Talia Coney tonight. We own a home in FQ Story, which is right on the border of 7th Avenue. There are three things I'd like to speak to tonight. The first one is in regard to the homeless. We want to be supportive of those people in the sense that they can have a place to go and use the restroom. In the last few months, I have had to pick up on a few occasions fecal matter and toilet paper, which has been left on our property directly facing 7th Avenue. There is a group out there called Poder in Action who has put forth something they're calling the Pueblo budget. One of those items is a bathroom amendment, and so I would like to be in support of that. The second is to speak in support of the police. We've been very pleased with the officers that have been coming out to do what they can, but I don't mean that just from a fiscal issue, but also from an enforcement issue. What's been expressed to us is that their hands are a bit tied at the moment, and they're unable to enforce certain ordinances, specific for camping, because we have people living in our alleys right now, and I don't particularly care to see naked men rolling around in our alleys. The final thing is to just thank you all for having us, and we're looking forward to working with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Barrow. Next up, Shirley Diekman.
I know you've seen me before. They know me. I don't live in some of those wonderful neighborhoods down in the middle of town. I live right across from Grand Canyon University in the Granada neighborhood, just about 11 blocks west of 27th Avenue. The homeless situation definitely needs to be addressed a lot. But one of the biggest things that I'm a supporter of is gating alleys. I talked to them before about that. I feel that the people that live in the city of Phoenix and are paying taxes should be protected from those unfortunate homeless people who have drug or alcohol or mental illness. And just as an example, we gated 2 of the alleys in my neighborhood. And since then, the one neighbor can let her little kids go out in the alley and not be accosted by syringes being tossed across the fence. One of them, the grandmother who was home alone a lot during the day, would always have someone banging on her door. That's not happening anymore because the alley is gated. Someone else had frequent things stolen from their yard on a consistent basis. That is not happening anymore. So gating alleys is a significant positive thing to do. A lot of people might not see it as that, but I've talked to I also support a lot of the families that live along 27th Avenue, and I don't know if you're familiar with that, but there is a crime-free program starting, which we're all excited about, yes, because it, for a while, led the nation in prostitution and sex trafficking. So we are cleaning it up, and those alleys, I've already talked to about 10 families that are ready to petition and get the alleys gated. So I just want those funds to be there, and that would be a great help. And the last thing I'd like to say is I've tried to use Phoenix 311 to get a hold of Phoenix Cares. Have you tried that? It's not very successful. I mean, I'm fairly computer and skilled, but I'm like, okay. Anyway, to me, it needs to be looked at, and there needs to be a more convenient way. The other way is to just email them. And I think that's the best way if you want to talk to Phoenix Cares. But I think we need some drug rehab programs and some mental health programs that we can offer these people. And as far as my police officers, they're the best people in the world. They're wonderful, they're active, they're participatory, they're out there. They're just wonderful people that I've just come to really appreciate and understand, especially that one cute little girl. She's my community action officer. So it's wonderful to see her up there. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you.
Shirley, aren't you supposed to be doing Zumba with me one morning? Oh. I'm gonna find you.
Our final speaker this evening is Jeremy Thacker. Jeremy?
Hello.
Hello.
Many factors contribute to the housing crisis we are experiencing here in Arizona, but a couple of those key problems that I want to identify are residents that are fighting density is a problem that's really, causing some issues with multifamily and getting really walkable neighborhoods. So one of the things I'd like to see is us getting some empathy to those residents and education regarding city priorities, like how density produces revenue for the city, that produces infrastructure and amenities. But right now they can't see that. So I think there's a company called Urban 3 that's part of Strong Towns as well, that does visualizations of revenue per acre. And I think seeing whether your neighborhood, your parcel is a positive or a negative helps people get beyond just zoning and code. So that's one thing I'd like to see us bring somebody like that in to get us more up to speed. I'd like to see the infill land speculators be penalized instead of the land speculators, the infill lots, instead of incentivized, which they are now. If you leave here tonight to Central Avenue, you'll see 3 properties that are great examples of that. Agave Farms is 15 acres across the street that has paid, when it's finished, it'll pay around $1 million a year in property taxes. They've paid less than $10,000 annually for the last decade, while contributing nothing socially or aesthetically to the neighborhood, yet benefiting from the work that the neighbors do, that everyone else does, and they don't do anything, they're out of state, while driving up the prices, only to wait till it hits the peak from the crisis they helped cause, cashing out, and then when it all falls apart, they buy again and rinse and repeat. So I think we should do something to the tax code, maybe create another category to whatever entitlements these have, we could use it to get rid of like the Prop 207, say, hey, we're gonna tax you on your entitlements instead of, so you can get rid of them, and then we can start over and actually build walkable communities without being handcuffed. So it's one idea. The place by the park that's over here, a budding that had the church on it, just ripped down a 10,000 square foot beautiful building that had been updated because they're seeking increased entitlements. And they know that it's profitable to tear it down in a housing crisis because it's less in property taxes. When we had the permits pulled because it was 49 years old and approaching historical, they went ahead and demoed it anyway because the penalty was lunch money for them. So that's another, the incentives and the disincentives need to be right. And those are just causing issues for the light rail, which we spent billions on. I want to reiterate what was said earlier about sidewalks and bike lanes. They are the cheapest way to create value and wealth, period. And the Agave Farms, a lot of the neighbors are fighting it because of on-street parking and things like that. And it's because we don't have sidewalks. That's it. Like, it seems unsafe because right now, if you're coming through Carnation, you've got to either decide whether I'm going to trespass on somebody's property or whether I'm going to walk in the street, which is a drag strip for high school students. So when that's happening, it seems unsafe when you've got on-street parking. You got sidewalks? No problem. But for that, tiny bit of money that we're saving, you're losing $1 million in property taxes because that thing's been delayed at least a year because of these little bitty, stupid fights between the neighbors and the developers. And Strong Towns, huge fan. Do it. The guy's brilliant. And then dedicated neighborhood advocate, I'd love to see. Right now, neighborhood associations, these are people that are not qualified to battle attorneys and their entire teams on billion-dollar developments that are happening. It is an unfair fight. The village planners are overwhelmed. There's no 1-to-1 ratio. It's 3-to-1 at best. And there's no one fighting for the neighbors, so they show up, waste time complaining about things that may or may not be the real issue. And we could solve all this with education. It's just wasteful the way that's happening. And I think hiring somebody to just go say, listen, hey, talk about the revenue, talk about how density supports, and get them embracing the non-suburban, urban, new way of doing things, I think would be money well spent. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeremy. And that was our final speaker, so I'll turn it back over to our council member who wants to close out the meeting.
Thank you. I'm going to speak about the bike lane, because I know by riding, during COVID, I rode a lot. My mom had one of those three-wheelers, so we would ride a lot, and understood very, very, especially with her, understood on riding on Thomas, how dangerous that could be. And then, we get to 7th Avenue, but we took 3rd because I said, I know there's the lanes. And if we have to, we can get in the main lane if we want. So I understand. I did get during that time because we needed to get out of the house. We needed to sit somewhere, just engage and really experience what it meant in riding in a bike lane. At one point, I did ride on Central, and I was like, I'll never do it again. It was just too scary for me. So then I understood the protective bike lanes. But I also witnessed, as a driver, someone riding a bike and a driver not paying attention, and right there's the plastic little protectors, and witnessed how easily a car could hit a biker. So that's when I really was like, okay, I'm not doing this any longer. We need protective lanes. I was in DC 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and really saw some really innovative ways that we could do here in Phoenix, and innovative ways even on 3rd and 5th of protective lanes, but also, because I know we're speaking about parking, on how cars can park. And so the cars park out really on we have the cycle track going, and then outside of the cycle track, that's where then designated parking is. I want to look at that. I want to see that. And what will normally happen, what will be the pushback is, oh, that costs money. But for me, it's about doing it right, doing it one time, and not keep going out and refixing it, and for solving the problem. So I do want to get to some of those solutions with the community to say, this has been blessed by the community. We've worked together to build a plan on how we bless it, as we bless it. The Phoenix Spokes, whoever else blesses that we do it this way. The flooding in Central City or all over our valley, but mainly in District 4, happens fast and quick. And my area was in a flood lane. I had flood insurance, and then all of a sudden, I'm no longer in the flood lane zone. And I still flood. So we need to figure that out. I know that we have these issues in our newer areas of Levine and South Phoenix, but in our well-established areas, we need to do it because the drains can't hold the capacity of the water. If you look in the GeoBond, St. Joseph's or Dignity Health fought for in the GeoBond for new drainage, because what was happening right there, which is the center, the emergency area was getting flooded quickly. And so, and this is another way, because in 5 years there will be another bond. I'm advocating for you to do this, to start going to those bond meetings, because that's how they got their funding, because it was so expensive to do it. So I think as a collaboration of historic homes in this area to organize And when we get ready for the bond, which I think is going to be in 3 years, which we have this conversation, 3 or 4 years, so you have a conversation, push for these pieces. Historic preservation, of course, yes, let's make that happen and have more. Arts and culture, we're actually having an art, and I'm pushing for 2 people to go on Saturday at 10 a.m. And this is all specifically an art budget. So if you can come, please join us. Enforcement for parking in the bike lane, totally agree. I've been watching it all down 3rd and 5th, and there is no enforcement. There are these plastic signs that I see saying this is a bike lane, not a parking space. So I have seen that, and we do need to look at enforcement in that area. I will look at strong towns. Shirley, yes, gated alleys. We added additional funding to gated alleys. It is working in some areas and helping. Homelessness on 7th Avenue and FQ Story, I'm very well aware of it because of Ginger Maddox, and she calls us every day. And I'm aware of what's happening in the alleys, which we do need to have police in those alleys and doing the enforcement that needs to happen. They can enforce, there's just different ways of enforcing. So I don't want the narrative to be, because of the ruling, we're not able to do these certain things. In any law, in any standard, because of the ruling, there's always flexibility within that boundary. And so we need to find that solution. What else? I do want to say April 18th, next Tuesday, at St. Francis Hall, I will be having an uptown community meeting to talk about all the development that will be going down Central. So if you want to join, you can. We will be talking about, I'm going to have 3 different series. One is about design and affordability. That's the first one, April 18th. The second one will be about mobility and transportation. And then the third one will be more of what we gathered and comments of what we've heard, common themes. And then maybe from there we continue. But I figured at this moment in time, people need to understand what's going to happen down Central and what's going to be built and what traffic is coming in and what we need to start preparing for. And it's from Central, I know I called it Uptown, but it's from Camelback all the way to Osborne. So if you're interested, please come. And then I will be having a forum with homeless solutions departments and housing, affordable housing. I will be having a forum regarding that. So I haven't set the date yet because we're putting all the pieces together. So if you sign up for my newsletter, you will then see everything that will be happening and the meetings that will be going on. So if you're interested, please sign up for the newsletter. We need your email, and then we'll get the information out. 311, I agree with. There are some technical difficulties that need to be fixed. I have gone on it, and there are some technical difficulties. My question to you, Jeff, and I don't know, is the tax code, or what Jeremy was talking about, or more of how do we do that?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk to Jeremy offline.
Okay.
A lot of what he was talking about pertains to some of the Jeeplets and some of the other things that we've done with some of these developments to waive property taxes, but also looking at the density and then just the revenue that they generate if they're actually providing taxes and other things. Prop 207 is an issue that we'd have to deal with because the state does preempt us relative to certain property rights. This is Arizona, so there, a lot of those, as you know, those rules go to the owner rather than others. But we can talk to Jeremy offline.
Yeah, because I think one of the things was how do we incentivize land speculators and get things, since we need housing. And if you have any suggestions or solutions, email us, because I will then work with those departments to to ask and make sure and get it going, and then we'll probably, a lot of times I work with the neighbors and form a committee or not formal committee, but get together and say, let's make this happen. So, any questions? All right, thank you. This one was easy.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming out this evening. Appreciate it.